So now that we've established that it's maybe not the end of the rainbow, just a bit of a different rainbow, what I would like to share with you today is what are the things that you can take control of, the practical things that you can change in your life as we go through these difficult times to maybe get to a better outcome and prevent yourself from making bad decisions. But before I do that, let's think about what Michael has said to us. And I want you to know, you put your hand up when you asked the question, but you've now had time to think about this. So do you think you're a pessimist, an optimist, or a realist? And when you think about that, how do you think you make decisions, especially decisions about your financial future? Once we know how we see the world and how that might influence us, we also need to understand how our brains work. Now, I know there's some medical professionals in the room, so I hope I don't offend you with this picture. I don't know if it's an accurate picture of a brain. But what is this telling us? The brain is a backward-looking, pattern-seeking system. What does this mean? It means every experience we have, our brain files through past experiences and finds the most recent, most similar experience and decide if it was a good or bad experience. So while we were doing the road shows, the one morning when we were leaving Oudtshoorn, I had a fantastic cappuccino. So that afternoon when we arrived in Cape Town and I was offered a cappuccino, what did my brain do? My brain went, oh, you had a fantastic cappuccino this morning, so yes, you should have another one. If I had had a bad cup of coffee, I would have said, no, thank you, I'm not interested right now. Now, this applies how we look at our finances and our investments. So when we get our quarterly statements, and the statement's not as good as the previous time, we experience this as a negative experience. Linked to that, we need to understand how the market works. Now, the market is a forward-looking pricing system. What does that mean? It means the market does not care what happened yesterday. The market is trying to decide what's the right price to pay for a share today to make money in 3 to 5 years. Now that's a fantastic combination. On the one side, us as humans look backwards for confirmation on our decisions, and on the other side, the market's forward-looking all the time. And we expect these two systems to work well together and get a good outcome. And if we add the difficult times we're living in, it's a recipe for disaster. So let's test this. These two products contain exactly the same ingredients. As you can see, the one contains 20% fat, and the other one is 80% fat-free. Which one do you think sold better? And that's exactly what your brain just did. It processed the information, it framed it for you, and you made a decision. Although you had the facts that the ingredients are exactly the same. Now, if we take this to financial planning, there's basically 4 things we need to think about. And I would like to spend some time on the first 2 today with you, and that is how much we save and how much we spend. The reason being, those are the things that's within our control, and those are the things that can distract from our outcome during the tough times. Just to touch on the retirement age, that's not always within our control, but in an ideal financial plan, you will have a set retirement date that you're working towards, and that will influence your decisions around your financial planning. The last one, how much growth we get, I am not talking about today. That's a topic on its own, and that's why we've got Wendell and the rest of the Cinnabar team here with us today. So let's look at the things we can control. Does anyone know what the dreaded B word is? Really? Okay, budget. So the next question is, who in the room has a budget? Better than expected. Is the budget written down? Do you use an app to track your budget? Is your budget what you think you spend versus what you actually spend? Do you adjust your budget? Why am I asking these questions? because I believe a budget is the cornerstone of every financial plan. And I always have the conversation with my clients. And yet, for a very long time, I thought I'm so clever as a financial advisor, I don't need to write down my budget. I've got my budget in my head. And then I thought about it and I decided I should practice what I preach. And I decided to write down my budget. And I learned a few things. The first thing I learned is that at the time that I did this, I was living at Hartbeespoort, commuting to Melrose Arch every day. So in my budget, in my mind, I'd allocated a rather large rand value to fuel every month because of the commute. Then when I wrote down my actual expenses, I realized I wasn't spending nearly that much on fuel. I was actually spending it on shoes, but that's a completely different story. The other thing I learned is that I'm really bad with cash. So if I have cash in my wallet, it just disappears and I don't account for it. So by having a budget that I make part of my daily life and I adapt and adjust, I was able to change my own behavior and my own expenses. And why did I decide to have this conversation with you today? Because times are tough. So it's highly likely, if you're a salaried employee, that your salary increases are barely keeping up with inflation at the moment. At the same time, there are certain expenses that are going up at a much higher rate. By way of example, ESCOM increases, education expenses, and medical expenses. And as that differential between what you're earning and what you need to spend on grows, you could fall in a debt trap. So it's very important that you're aware of your spending, what you're spending on, and where you can make changes. So I would like to share some thoughts around that with you. And the first one, I'm going to pick on the chicks in the room. So, you know those specials, buy two products and you get a bag of makeup free? Oh, there's some people that relate. Yeah, bad idea. So most of the time, the colors is not the colors you use. The products you get for free is not products you normally would use. And if it was really for free, why would they run these promotions? They're still making money out of you. So be very careful for the reasons of buying these promotional items and whether you really need them. The other one I want to talk about is brand loyalty. So that's quite an interesting topic. And I'll use myself as an example again. So growing up, my mother only used Skip washing powder. So when I grew up, obviously I only used Skip washing powder. Then one day my husband went shopping and came home with Omo. I thought the world was ending because we only use Skip, until I saw the price difference. Needless to say, we don't use Skip anymore. The other example that I actually picked up here in Joburg, and I have to admit, this is our 10th wealth tour the presentation, and I still cannot pronounce the brand, but those people that have woken up and have moved away from the Apple and the Samsungs and have replaced those expensive phones with the Huawei. That's it. The audience is supposed to help me here. So there we go. So this is a very interesting example because I've noticed quite a few professionals in Johannesburg that have made that decision. And they seem to be very happy with the quality of the product, the quality of the photos, the apps they can use, and it's a fraction of the price of the brands that we've discussed earlier. So be very careful when you're looking at brand loyalty and making a decision on perceived quality or perceived benefit when there is alternatives out there. The other thing when it comes to budgeting and expenses that we need to be aware of is obviously what we call our big ticket items. So that is things like TVs, fridges, and those type of things. And especially where technology is involved. Generally, like for example, the curved TVs, when they came out, they were very, very expensive. But with the advancement in technology and the pace, the price comes down quite quickly. So if you can be a bit patient and shop around, you can save some money. And then the other one I want to touch on is the bottom one where it says, don't assume the price is as displayed. So I think generally us as South Africans are a bit shy to ask for if there's a discount or to negotiate a bit. Because we believe if there was a discount, they would offer it. We shouldn't ask. So one of my colleagues recently went to a medical professional, and when he was done and he walked out and he spoke to the receptionist, he on a whim said to the receptionist, if I pay my bill in full now, in cash, is there a discount? And he got a 20% discount on his bill. So what's the worst that can happen? They can say no. But you will never know if you don't ask. And remember, charity begins at home. In the tough times, we need to save where we can, because it's the cents that makes the rands. Now, with taking all of this into account, the other thing that we need to worry about is debt. Because, as I said, the differential grows and people start living on debt. So let's just have a look at good debt and bad debt. So good debt's quite obvious. The first one is your home loan. It's an asset-backed debt. Very few people can afford to buy a house cash. And in an ideal financial plan, by the time you get to retirement, the house should be paid for. Cars is a bit of a contentious topic. And us South Africans, especially the youngsters in Joburg, like to drive flashy cars and all of those things. So just when making a decision to purchase a car, make sure you do it in the right structure for the right reasons, and be very careful of those big balloon payments at the end that they make so attractive. And then the last one under good debt is obviously if you're running a business and you're using gearing and leveraging to grow the business in a well thought out manner. That's a good sound business principle. The one I'm concerned about is the bad debt, the short-term debt. That's expensive. That is a risk in the days and times we're living in, especially where there's pressure and people are not coming out with their income. The other thing we find a lot with clients is that they're spending money they haven't earned yet. So they think they will put stuff on credit in the hope that they will earn the bonus, in the hope that they will get the salary increase. And it's a very dangerous spiral that one can get into with debt, especially if you don't understand the cost of short-term debt. The other thing to be aware of is what I call the just expenses. I'm just going to buy this on credit. I'm just going to do that. We are brilliant at justifying things for ourselves, and you don't need to tell anyone else about it. But my concern is that it becomes a spiral and you start using credit to pay credit. So if you have more than one credit card, I would suggest that you find out what the different interest rates are, what your repayment is, and have a dedicated plan to clear the credit cards. And if you've cleared the first one, cut it up. It's too much of a temptation. If you've had an open and honest discussion with yourself and you realize you're in trouble, please seek professional help. We have a fantastic national credit regulator. There's things that can be done to help you. And as I've said, in these tough times, it's very easy to fall into the debt trap. But let's take a positive stance here, and let's assume our debt's under control, our plan is on track, we're saving money, and what is the other thing we should do now in these tough times? We should listen to Mr. Warren Buffett, of course. He is the most successful investor of all time. And what is he telling us? He's saying, stick to your strategy. Do not make emotional decisions that can detract from your long-term outcome. Do not realize the losses by making bad decisions. And I've got another way of explaining this or showing this. If you look at this cartoon, when I was preparing this presentation, I was looking at past presentations I've done, and I saw this cartoon that I used in 2009. And guess what? I can use it today again. Why am I sharing this with you? Because this too shall pass. The fundamentals will come through. If you've got a well-diversified strategy, a financial plan that you're managing actively, and you're keeping yourself from making bad short-term decisions, there shouldn't be any reason for you not to find your own pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. Thank you very much.